welcome now to the podium and hand her the mic, Reverend Dr. Mary Beth Speer.
Oh, I muted myself. There are any number of people who wish they could do that for me, but
that's a good one.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Ashley, could you change the view so that I can actually see the Hollywood Squares here? Anyway, welcome everyone. Yeah, if we can get the slide off, and then we'll be able to see everyone together. That would be great. Anyway, good morning, everyone, and happy, as Reverend Marzia said, happy week before Thanksgiving. It's a beautiful week.
Thanksgiving. This is a week of Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving and thanks living.
Thanks living. Oh, I love that one. Where did you get that one?
I have no idea. Somewhere came that synapse. I'm not sure where. You know, in my Monday morning metaphysics group, which you're all welcome to zoom in on, it's my weekly gift to the New Thought movement. We spend an hour and a half really delving into some rather significant material, and it's open to anyone, and you're welcome to join in. I'll put my email address at the end of my message here in the chat if you'd like to know where we are in the book. Sometimes people want to know in what book we're on, but anyway, I welcome you, and I'm always so delighted when Reverend Marzia can zoom in. It's just, it's always a better day when you're there, Reverend Marzia.
Oh, absolutely. Better day for me.
Yay. Well, you know, in that group, I start off every week with my opening prayer treatment, and I always do a long time prayer treatment that was given to me by the person who actually was my mentor in learning how to do that book group study. And we say, Namaste. I honor the place within us where the entire universe resides. I honor that place within us of love, of light, of truth, of peace. And I honor the power within us to be consciously aware of the indwelling divinity in ourselves and in all humanity everywhere. And I add, with no exceptions. And so often it's really hard because in this world we're in right now, I think looking out into some of the very troubled spots in this world, the politics that are going on, the diversity, the divisiveness, to be able to really look at others and say, well, hello, God. Interesting get up. You almost had me fooled there. So I am going to share with you a message today, my infinite pie. I wrote that poem. I called the poem such as Infinite Pie, I call them meta musings. And I have the book that I'm working on is a collection of those meta musings. And they're really simplistic little verses that seem almost innocuous, but they're taking on some of the very simple but profound and not easy to understand sometimes principles of metaphysics. And we're going to take that one infinite pie apart today, but I want to share with you the origin of it. My husband, Reverend Michael, and I became licensed ministers, not yet ordained. And actually the ordination followed being sponsored for a couple of years by one of the people you know quite well, I'm sure, many of you, Reverend Dr. Charles Gaddis, who was Michael's and my preordination sponsor for a few years. We were blessed by that. And Reverend Michael and I, when we got our license and we're brand newbie ministers, and we were so excited about starting our own work. And we lived in the Southern California area at the time. And this is back in 1998. We finished all of our qualifications. We got our licenses in the middle of the summer, and we already had in place a plan to begin a new work. We wanted to start our own church, put a pin on the map, and start a New Thought movement, another point of reference in the New Thought movement. And we were religious science ministers, still are. So that looked really good on paper. And we'd done our demographic research. We'd done everything we needed to do. And we found a spot, a perfect spot, right on the map in the foothills of Southern California, due east of Pasadena. In fact, the street that the temple, Masonic temple, that we eventually moved into was right on the street where they park the Rose Bowl floats after the Rose Bowl parade every year. So it's a beautiful area. We found this lovely little community called Sierra Madre. And we knew we were supposed to be there. We knew we'd been guided to this place. We worked out the details with the Masonic temple folks, you know, the hierarchy there. And we actually even signed on for a year with that temple. So everything was looking great. We were going to start our work on, I think it was October 11th of 1998. And you turn the page, and then something happened that intervened. And what happened was we had a minister who was adjacent to us, another religious science minister, and she was in the church that Michael and I had actually attended. It was a church where I had gone through and gotten all of my spiritual mind practitioner criteria, the whole thing. She had been our minister. And she was feeling threatened by our being there. We were 10 miles away. In the organization Religious Science International, we were required to be 10 miles apart back in those days. This is going to play into the infinite pi talk. So we were at that Masonic temple, the place we wanted to go. It was exactly 0.2 of a mile short of 10 miles. And we were contested. So at that time, we got very dramatic about it because back in those days, we still were feeling dramatic about things like that ourselves. And it required that we go to the board of directors of the Religious Science International organization and officially petition to have a variance approved by them so that we would have the approval to begin our work. We went about all kinds of gyrations and lamentations and gnashing of teeth, and we got really dramatic about it ourselves. And we did a lot of work around it, knew that we were supposed to be there. And we began to have a lot of, we really pushed on this. We felt pressure. I'm sure many of you know that kind of pressure. It just made no sense to us at all. And that said, it was in the way. Something happened right before they had that board of directors meeting. This particular minister, knowing we were petitioning and knowing it would be approved, put in a request for a bylaw variance for Religious Science International to extend the different distance between churches beyond the 10 miles to something, I think, as much as 50 miles apart. When we heard about that from the person who was our advocate on the board, it was one of those moments where, for me, everything got really quiet. And you can probably relate to this. Everything got so quiet. And the reason it got so quiet for me was because I suddenly realized that it was a done deal. And the reason I knew it was a done deal is that I would never join an organization that would approve that, because it went in the face of everything we teach. So needless to say, we got our, they did not vote in that bylaw variance or, change. They voted in our variance. We wound up starting our work, we wound up starting our work a week after we had planned to begin it. And what's very funny, there's a statement in the Bible that says, they meant it for harm, you take it for good. The good that really came out of that amazing thing with the delay, the time delay of what we thought we were supposed to have. The thing that happened is we had the opportunity to go and mentor with Reverend Mary, then she was known as Reverend Mary Mannon Morrissey, who's a very prolific minister, had a fabulous work. And we were able to actually go sit at Mary's feet for 3 days while she taught how boards work with ministers. And we were the only ministers there who did not yet have a church. Mary sent us flowers on our opening day. And we sent her a note back saying, thanks for holding our baby while we grow into this. Okay, so I don't remember exactly how Infinite Pi came to me, the poem came to me. but it came to me before I knew a concept that has been a real North Star for me for a long, long time. And it's the statement by Hermes the Great. It goes way back into antiquity. And the statement is one that you've probably heard that says, God is an infinite sphere whose circumference is nowhere and whose center is everywhere. So let's take a look at what the infinite pie looks like. I want you to close your eyes, and I want you to imagine a pie, and you have to appreciate, I did Infinite Pie Sunday every year at my church, the church Michael and I had from that point on. And we always had a great potluck because we had Infinite Pie potluck following the service. So I really encourage you all, get a piece of pie today and enjoy it. So close your eyes and now vision a pie, a big pumpkin pie or apple pie or whatever's your favorite pie. And now see yourself taking a very big, deep piece of that pie. And then I'm coming over, so you're going to cut me a piece too. And then Michael's going to come over, and now Aisley comes over, and now Marzia comes over, and now Joan comes over, and now Dr. Alma comes over. Are you noticing that the pie pieces are getting smaller and smaller and smaller? And in finite pie world, we begin to experience scarcity. Okay, you can open your eyes now. There's scarcity in finite pie because the more people want to partake of your pie, even though you're generous initially, there comes a point where it really pushes generosity of spirit, which is truly what was going on, of course, for us back in 1998. It was going on for that particular minister back in 1998. And it is true for any of us who are living in the world of finite pie. Because it's a matter of the more people want to share, the less there is. What I deeply appreciate about this movement is it is exactly the opposite. So close your eyes again. And now let's picture a pie. But don't put an edge on that pie. Just put yourself at the center. Put your knife at the center of that pie and begin to cut a little piece of that pie. And now Reverend Marzia comes over, and Michael comes over, and Cindy comes over, and Aisley comes over, and everybody starts to take a little piece of that pie. But I want you to imagine now that you begin to see that piece, that little tiny wedge of your pie, no matter how many of us come in and we want to partake there, begin to see that pie extend out into infinitude. Now, we are in a place where as much as we can take is as much as we can have. You can open your eyes now. This is really the secret, crux to our teaching, that we are living in a world, in a universe of infinite pie consciousness when we align with it. And that can be our heaven or it can be our hell, depending on whether we see ourselves as finite or infinite. Our founder, Dr. Ernest Holmes, made the statement, the universe can only give us what we can take. And since our taking is a thing of consciousness, the universe can only give us what we are aware of. So my job, my goal here today is to really help with the concept of that awareness. And, there's many ways to slice that pie. So let's take a look at the poem. And I'm gonna play it back to us again. Let me see if I can find my copy of it. Where did I put it? I've got pages all over my lap. Okay, hold on one moment. There it is. Okay. So I'm going to take this poem, I'm going to go line by line with it for you. We live in a realm, we live in a universe where we teach there's only one of us here at the level of the absolute. We do not teach that there's you plus God or me plus God, or that we are separate from God. We teach that all we are is God. So you think about that Hermes quote, God is an infinite sphere whose circumference is nowhere and whose center is everywhere. Well, each one of us is a point of consciousness in the one mind. We are individualized expressions of that one mind, of that one infinite limitless, boundless mind, whose qualities are purity, all good, all love. Being one with that, we cannot be separate from it because it's infinite. Therefore, it must have us in it. And like the cyberspace we're in, like the internet, the GOD, the gives on demand internet that is ever expanding yet always complete, we have to be one with that. We have to be one within it. And if we're one within it, it would follow that we must have its qualities and its qualities must be ours. The interesting thing about that, of course, is we have also been told we were made in the image and likeness of God. Jesus said, being in the form of God, he thought it not robbery to be equal to God. And yet what we also have is free will. And it's that free will that catches us up. It's that free will that stops being able to see, number one, that there's only one eye here. It's also that which is hard to see, that this pie that we're a part of is infinite. So we live in a realm where there is only one eye, the eye that is, quote, we share the infinite pie. So it's our birthright to claim that which is ours. We claim it. We stand in the truth of our being. We claim what is ours, and that is our lived experience. We stand in the belief that what is ours by right of consciousness. And by right of consciousness, to me, has been a really wonderful expression for many, many years. When I think about what's mine, the home I live in, the magnificent spouse I have, the car in my garage, the clothes that I'm wearing, the people that I associate with, all of this, it's all mine by right of consciousness. It's what I have chosen to claim. So by right of my birth, we each claim our stake. Well, the stake that we claim is as good as we take. A lot of you are very familiar with Louise Hay, and I think Louise Hay gives one of the most wonderful analogies of that claiming of affluence or abundance. She talks about seeing ourselves as standing in the ocean of abundance, and then looking down in our hands and seeing what is in our hands for us to take in that ocean of abundance. Is it a thimble? Is it a little cracked cup? Is it a bucket? Is it a pipeline? What is it in our hands? Because whatever it is in our hands, in our mind's eye, that we can access the infinite ocean of abundance is as much as we can take. And yet still there's infinitely more. There are truly no limits to this infinite pie, save the limits we see with our limited eye. So today we're going to talk about what it is that we've done to kind of set those limits and see if we can walk away from this time together with some ideas about how we can expand the limits of that limited eye that we have had. And we partake of this pie every year that we live, and we discover through living that we get back what we give. So in our culture, you may have noticed that what we do is we trend limitation. We trend the ideas of limitation. And that trending that we have, that idea is something that we have shared with each other as humanity down through time. You know, it's been going on forever. And the idea is that there's not enough. And if I have more, then there may not be enough for you. And that's just scarcity. You know, when I'm seeing a limit to my infinite pie, that's just scarcity. That's just a belief in the constriction of thought. Well, I'm a person who really loves the intersection of science and spirituality. And so looking at this constricted energy, I also look at it from the science of the constriction. The constricted energy that we feel, that negative energy that we have, is force, because now we feel like we have to force our way. It was what Michael and I experienced when we found out that we weren't going to get our way right off the bat, and we experienced a lot of force. The thing about force is, in nature, there's also counter force, and it can actually be calibrated. Force can actually be calibrated. And one of the ways that Dr. David Hawkins actually calibrated consciousness was using kinesiology, because the body itself will measure what's strong and what's weak. And what the body itself is measuring through kinesiology that goes beyond the intellect, it's measuring truth or the absence of truth. Force is the absence of truth. And when it's measured, it will always measure weakly. Force, which is the flow of energy, the infinite flow of energy, power, is a truth. It's the realization, the vibration of all abundance, all power, all good in our world. And it is the truth of our being, because God is perfect, whole, complete, and absolute. So it will always measure strongly through kinesiology. So what are the comparatives? Well, first, before I tell you the comparatives, I want to talk about how we've kind of agreed upon this as a collective consciousness. And remember, if there's only one of us here, then every one of us is contributing to the collective consciousness. And the thing about the collective consciousness is that we are affecting that mind, that one absolute mind. So there's been this thing called idea viruses. They call them memes. What we do is we meme ideas. Memeing is taking a contagious idea. It actually replicates a virus, and it passes it on from one mind to another. So we share these ideas about limitation with each other, going, it's just the way it is. You know, we do it through seeing competition. We see it through hoarding. And of course, you know, we probably saw a lot of toilet paper hoarding. I certainly did during the COVID situation. That was one of the first things where we experienced scarcity. Not because there wasn't enough, but because there was fear of scarcity. Therefore, there was hoarding. Therefore, we literally created man-made scarcity. You probably all saw that. Resentment is the finite high consciousness, having our good interfered with. Competition is a biggie. Lack, hell itself, and war are signs of constricted energy, the constricted energy of finite pi consciousness. In our teaching, we teach that each and every one of us is a point of power in the one mind. We teach that there is only one of us here. And when you think about the quote, God is an infinite sphere whose center is everywhere and circumference is nowhere. Well, the circumference really, when we are the point of power, it goes from being nowhere to all here, now here. Each one of us, all of us on this call, every one of us in humanity, whether we really are aware of it or not, we are that center that has no circumference. And when we really begin to align with that in our infinite pi consciousness, we begin to realize God is nowhere. It is now here. It's now here, right where you are and right where I am. The aspects of infinite pi consciousness that we can all work on is not competition, but collaboration. Not hoarding, but sharing. Not resentment, but celebration. Not seeing our good as being interfered with, but realizing no one can get in the way of my good or your good. We claim our good. It's ours by right of consciousness. And the more we know that, the more we can share and expand other people's good. Competition, go back to the idea of right of consciousness. Things are in my life by right of consciousness. If somebody appears to have gotten another job that you wanted, it wasn't your job. It wasn't your job because it's not there. Your job is yours by right of consciousness. In place of lack, being able to see plenty, to be able to really do the meditations where we can see the infinite abundance of spirit and action. And certainly we can see it through the seasons. Right now, we're waiting for the last leaves to fall so that we can go clear our yards. But the barrenness in those trees are symbolic that within the limbs of that tree that I look at outside, Infinite abundance will be bursting forth in spring. We know it to be true. And right now, it's just getting ready. Hell is not, it's finite consciousness is hell. Infinite pi is heaven. War is hell. Peace is infinite pi. So I want to share a story, and I think I'm probably going to need to do this in closing. I want to share a story that I really appreciate. And it's one that my grandchildren actually get to participate in every year at the school that they go to. It's an old story, and I'll bet you many of you have heard it. And if you have heard it before, just hear it with new eyes and think about it through the eyes of infinite pi. It's the story of stone soup. And I'll tell you the story as I picked it out of the internet and was able to read it. So once upon a time, it says, somewhere in post-war Eastern Europe, there was a great famine in which people were jealously hoarding whatever food they could find, hiding it even from their friends and their neighbors. Well, one day into this little village comes wandering a soldier who begins asking questions as if he planned to stay for the night. And he's told by the people in the town, you know, there's not a bite to eat here in the whole province. We really encourage that you just keep walking. And he said, you know, I have everything I need. In fact, he goes, I was thinking about making some stone soup, which I could share with you. And at that, he pulls out an iron cauldron from his wagon. He fills it with plain water. He builds a fire under it. And then with great ceremony, he draws out an ordinary looking stone from a velvet bag, and he carefully drops it into the hot water. By now, he's hearing the rumor of food. Most of the villagers had come to the square, and now they're watching from their windows as they see this crazy soldier who's now sniffing the broth and licking his lips in anticipation. Hunger begins to overcome their skepticism. The soldier says to himself loudly, I do love a tasty stone soup. Of course, my stone soup with cabbage. Now that would be really hard to beat. And right about that point, a villager hears him and approaches him hesitantly, and he pulls a cabbage and he hands it to him from its hiding place. And at that point, they add it to the pot. Capital, cries the soldier. You know, I once had stone soup with cabbage, and it was so much better because there was a bit of salt beef that was in there as well, and it made it fit for a king. The village butcher manages to find some salt beef. And, you know, you can now begin to imagine what's happening. Now someone pulls out one of their potatoes, and someone else brings their onions they'd been hoarding. Someone else contributes carrots. Someone found some mushrooms, and they bring them. And soon, truly, now what is bubbling in the cauldron is this delicious, sweet-smelling soup that the soldier continues to stir. And everyone is just absolutely excited about tasting that wonderful soup and alleviating their hunger. So now the villagers begin to offer the soldier a great deal of money for the magic stone, but he refuses to sell. And at that, after they've had a wonderful, sumptuous meal together, he travels on the next day, leaving the moral of the story that by working together with everyone contributing what they have can be a greater good achieved. You know, there's a wonderful quote by Howard Thurman that fits a little bit in here that says, don't ask what the world needs. Ask what makes you come alive and go do it. Because what the world needs is people who have come alive. I invite all of us to really spend some time in contemplation this week about being a part of an infinite pi. I encourage you to think about the infinite pi, but now expand it further, because at the time I realized infinite pi consciousness that many, many years ago, when our church started and we had our first infinite pi Sunday, I hadn't yet read that quote, that beautiful saying by Hermes the Great, because it didn't say God is an infinite pi whose center is everywhere and whose circumference is nowhere. It said God is an infinite sphere. So now we have to take, and let's do that in closing, take that pi and now make it three-dimensional so that we can truly see that it does encompass everything when there is no circumference to the highest and greatest good for all. So I invite you all this Sunday and this week to contemplate your piece of the infinite pie, and remember that as good as you can have is as good as you can take. And when the taking and the giving include others, surely it washes back on our shore through right of consciousness. God is good all the time. You and I are God. We're good all the time. And that's the way it really is in my world. And so it is. Thank you.
And so it is. Wow, and so it is, Reverend Dr. Mary Beth. Yeah, I can taste that infinite pie right now, but I'm gonna give each person anybody who wants to make a comment or ask a question or suggestion, or what's your takeaway here, to just delve in. So, Reverend Dr. Mary Beth, that was deep for me. You know, people are, thinking about what they're gonna say, but while you're speaking, I'm just thinking about my own life and my own self, and how I had viewed this pie. Of course, this poem you write is so appropriate, and it speaks, deep to me, because there are times when I'm still looking with limited eye, and knowing that, in the back of my mind, I know that there is the infinite, but I still look at the limited. And relating to that, the idea of hoarding, storing. I have the storage facility, which every time I open the door and face it, I just want to quickly close it back because it needs to be cleared. And I know that's probably one spokes in my wheel or are not in my wheel that I need to fix. It needs to be repaired. And so, I'm seeing now that phenomenon is part of limitation, because with the idea of expanding further aglow, yeah, I can see that now. I'm so happy that I'm so glad that I'm here to penetrate this message today.
I'll share with you, Reverend Marzia. It's really so amazing to see what my grandchildren are ages 6 and 9. And at their school, they actually do build the fire. Every year they do a stone soup. And every year they build a fire, and they get a cauldron, and they do the stone in the cauldron, and all the children bring something for the stone soup.
So this is not just a myth. It's not just a myth story.
I think it started as a myth. It may have, I don't know the origin, but It is a real thing, because what our grandchildren are taught, they study this at the school. They're in a Waldorf school. Oh. And so everyone brings something. They have, and it's one of the best times of the year, because they eat a lot of vegetables, which they might not do at home. But because they all bring the food, they cut up broccoli, and they cut up potatoes and carrots, and and they have this beautiful soup, and the parents come, and everybody has stone soup lunch at the school. So they learn that principle of sharing, which is really fabulous.
Yeah, wow. Now that is something that's a real takeaway. That is a real takeaway. And while I was in the meditation about expanding, like I was seeing my slice like a wedge. And when we went into the second part now of expanding that, I just see that's my slice just going further and further and further into infinity. And I realized that, listen, there's no end to this. This is really where the circumference is nowhere, which is the other way around. The center is everywhere, and the circumference is nowhere.
Right.
Yeah. So I could see that. However, I know I need to do some cleaning out here.
Yeah, I'm very visual when I study these theoretical principles, because
Right.
they're just hard to understand. I mean, Ernest Holmes, our founder, you probably heard it. He says information without application is hallucination. So it's entertaining, but I'm visual, and one of my favorite visuals on the whole quote, the whole Hermes quote, is the internet. The realization that I'm sitting here on my internet. We're all here in cyberspace. There's no in cyberspace, the distance isn't a dimension. So we're all here now here. And how we're here is somewhere. We don't know how, but the whole idea is when I come up with something that I desire, that I want to make my claim to, that's what I identify it, and I hit enter in my computer. I don't know where that demand goes, but it goes somewhere out in the universe, and it comes back to me at my local address. I was going to mention another finite and infinite high consciousness is the way we have been memed, the idea viruses, the way we've been memed to think about supply. If you think about it, the word supply and demand, were you raised to say supply and demand?
No.
You had not heard supply and demand?
We did, but probably in high school, probably when I was in economics class or something, but not as a young child.
Yeah, the phrase supply and demand. Were you, Ashley? You're nodding your head. Yeah, you always heard supply and demand, right? Did anyone ever say to you demand and supply? That didn't happen.
No, it's usually supply and demand. Which
is exactly the opposite of what we teach.
Yes.
So we have been brought up in finite consciousness, finite mind consciousness, to think we had to have supply.
Or we have the demand.
Yeah. But the whole principle is demand precedes supply. Supply is infinite. It's our demand on supply that provides the evidence of supply. Because the thing about supply itself is actually a principle. It's not a physical, tangible thing. So when we feel we have a need, when we desire money or we desire anything, time, relationship, whatever it is, that we desire is, desire is a download, desire from the Father.
From the Father.
So heartfelt desire that comes as a divine download becomes, if we stay with it, our demand on infinite supply. So when we manifest that, the manifestation is evidence of the invisible principle of supply. But the invisible principle of supply, all supply, it's part of the infinite pie. It's everywhere present. And it only manifests when we put a demand on it. So now take that and think quantum physics. Okay, so now in quantum physics, you've got infinite waves of potentiality and possibility. Infinite waves, anything's possible. Anything. It's just all waves and ideas and dreams and infinite waves until we put a demand, which takes, according to physics, quantum physics, it takes the wave and now it transforms it into a particle.
Right.
The particle is what begins to attract to it as long as we stay with it. The particle is what will attract to it. All it needs to manifest so that it can become evidence of that infinite supply.
So as long as we stay with our desire, keep our desire in our consciousness, that desire is commensurate to the demand. And so the demand stays there and create the particles, and the particles continue to expand and attract to it like the rest of, to make it the whole manifestation, demonstration of whatever it is that we're demanding.
Which is, if you think about it, at a level of reality, at a deeper metaphysical level of reality, that which we desire is already present. It just has not shown up in the physical world. But when we were taught to, as practitioners, to do our spiritual mind treatment, we were taught to treat from the demonstration, not for it.
Right. Not from, yes. Yes. Wow.
You know, and that's why I love, to me, science is trying to explain a lot of what has been known down through time. I mean, to me, hearing Jesus' words about the mustard seed, to have that much faith, which would be to have that much willingness to stay with the desire and put a demand on infinite supply, to have the faith of the mustard seed is to know the mountain will move so that we can have what we desire.
Exactly.
But we have to stay with it. We have to have that faith, and that's the harder part, of course.
That's the part, the faith part, which gets challenging. Anyhow, you made a point where it says we trend limitation, and we trend it so unconsciously that we don't even know that's what we're doing. When I say, oh, you know, that's how it is. Everyone is going back to their in-person now, so what can we do? Not seeing or losing sight of the infinite possibilities of expanding that pie out. Yeah, we might start with at the point, you know, that dovetail, but then we can expand, and just losing sight that the expansion is it's going into that realm of potentiality, that realm of possibilities, which we just need to take the scale off our eyes and move the curtain, and we just see, because it's there, as you said, it's there already, just that we're not seeing it yet, and we need to see that.
Yeah, there's that expression that says, if you can make it trend, you can make it true. You know, marketers count on that, but it's about how we're trending ourselves subjectively. You know, and the way I can know what I'm trending is by what's going on in my world.
Right.
And you know, one of the things we did a lot of that was so helpful for me, and I still do it periodically, but not like I used to track my thinking. When I was a new student of metaphysics, taking science mind classes, it was homework for us to keep track of our repetitive thinking. And we would set timers. You know, I drove a lot. At that point, I was in the field a lot. As a safety specialist, I was driving hundreds of miles a week. So I had lots and lots of time in my head. And so I would set a timer. I had like a little kitchen timer I'd have on the passenger seat of my car. And I would just turn the timer, and I'd be driving along and being completely unconscious. The timer would go off, and you're like, what am I thinking? And it's just stunning how the trending of my thought would replicate and replicate and replicate, which is why they say we think maybe 60,000 thoughts a day. The thing is, they're generally the same 60,000 thoughts we thought yesterday.
Yes.
So that's why I love that our movement is called the New Thought Movement.
Right. Entertaining a new thought at all times, or whenever it is, whenever we're conscious of that new thought. Any more hands, any more suggestions before we move along? All righty then. Mr. Smith, you had something to say, or?
All I have to say is that I'm going to keep dissecting this pie.
Yes.
and keep sharing it. Keep sharing it.
Once it's dissected, it has to be shared. You know, as wherever there is something edible and tasty, you know,
Delicious.
the aroma and the is always attracting. So there's usually someone else who is, you know, who I can share with along this path. Thank you.
Yes.
Reverend.
And before we close, there was this you were talking about God giving us, I don't remember exactly the phrase it, but I was thinking about this scripture passage that says, God does not give us more than we can bear. And we usually interpret that by saying, you know, by the things that are unpleasant. God is not going to give us more unpleasantness, no more despicableness than we can actually manage. But it's actually, as you said it, as how you put it, is what we can, what we're, as long as we're not limited to what we can slice, that is what we get. So
Mhm.
it's not just the unpleasantness, it's just whatever we plan to take. That is what is given to us. However, our consciousness can bear it or can have it, that is what we get.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah, so, yeah, so thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you for letting me be here and have another year of doing infinite pi consciousness.
Yes,
It's really
yes,
play with this. It will
yes,
take you deeper, especially when you take it not just from that two-dimensional pi,
right.
but it becomes the three-dimensional sphere, and then the
Sphere,
fourth dimensional sphere.
from the sphere
Then it
aspect.
gets
Yes.
fascinating. Yeah,
Hmm.
sphere pi.
Yes.
Michael just from the side here said, "Oh, spear pie."
Spirit part. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
We're
That's
gonna-
easier to even envision. Thank you, Michael.
we're gonna-
Hey. Thank you. Thank you so much.